What's going on, everybody? I decided to make a movie review about Jonah Hill's new documentary film called Stutz. And this documentary is completely different from anything that I've seen in the past because it's probably the first time that I've seen a patient interview their therapist. As you guys know, Jonah Hill, he stepped away from acting to focus more on his mental health. So when I saw this as part of the recommendation list on Netflix, I just had to watch it because it reminded me of that news. So Jonah Hill, he directed, he co-produced this project. And it was interesting because in the first 20 minutes of the documentary, he's interviewing his therapist. And at some point, his therapist was telling him to elaborate more on what issues that him and his mom had when it came to his image and other stuff. And Jonah Hill said, "It's not about me, this is about you." But then after the 21 minute mark, it went from an interview to basically both of them talking on camera and Jonah Hill telling him that basically he apologized because he feels that he was lying to him and to people that are going to be watching the documentary, pretending that everything is okay when it's not. And I felt that was very, very bold, very vulnerable of Jonah Hill to say that. And this documentary, he really showed and poured everything that he's been going through, the progress, the mutual respect, love and respect relationship that him and his therapist have for one another. And there's a couple of things that I learned about Phil Stutz, the therapist. He talks about the 3 levels of life forces, which are people, body, and yourself. Get your body to work better. The importance of dieting and exercising. So there is just so many things that this documentary provided that was very beneficial. The part where he mentions part X is the judgmental part of you. It wants to block your evolution. Part X is the voice of impossibility. So all of us, we need that part X in order to overcome obstacles, in order to see ourselves how strong and valuable we are. It's just a lot of levels to that, and I never heard of Part X until this documentary, so I'm gonna have to rewatch it again because it was a very fascinating documentary. He also, Phil Stutz talks about the 3 aspects of reality, which is pain, uncertainty, and constant work. And all of us human beings, we have that. So, yeah, and also Phil Stutz's upbringing was interesting because he said in the documentary that his parents, it's mostly his dad told them that becoming a doctor is the only career that has meaning to it, that is worth it. I'm paraphrasing. And also the father said, which is not a surprise because when you're old school parent, you think differently. But basically his father told him, if you don't become a doctor, I'll never respect you. So that's huge to tell, your son that. And Phil Stutz, he went on to become a therapist, so there's that. But that's tough to tell a kid. I mean, I personally can imagine telling I don't have kids, but I can't imagine telling my kids that. But I understand that it was a different time, a different generation. Stutz's parents were atheists, and one of the similarities that him and Jonah Hill have is they both lost a brother. They both were deeply affected by it. So that brings the relationship even more closer and tighter because they have that as one of their biggest similarities, and they could, identify with each other. Stutz also mentioned in his documentary, failure, weakness, and vulnerability connects to the world, which is true, because none of us exempt from suffering. We all, at some point in our lives, we're going to go through something. The most important thing is, how are we going to respond to it? And I remember when my grandmother passed away in 2014, I was 22 years old. I felt that I needed therapy, but at that time, I didn't know how to go about it. So I know that at some point in my life, I'm gonna want to go see therapy. I'm gonna want to go see a therapist. And when you go to therapy, it does not mean you're crazy. It does not mean you're delusional. Therapy helps a lot. So I feel that therapy is necessary for everyone at some point in their lives. So I'm looking forward to that process whenever I'm ready to do it. And I also agree that Stutz say that everyone needs help to help them move forward. So I completely agree with that. Jonah Hill in this documentary mentions that he thought that having money and success, winning awards, was going to block all those insecurities that he was feeling, but it didn't. And it made things worse when the media constantly tried to mock his weight problem. And that made things even worse because he was already feeling insecure about himself, and the fact that the media kept jamming that to his throat, it just made things worse. So I hope that this documentary, people see Jonah Hill in a different light. I know I did. I've always been a fan of his work, so I'm glad that he made this documentary. I enjoyed it a lot. I also can't forget to mention that his mom made an appearance on the documentary, and you saw how both of them, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you do so, but you saw how both of them were opening up to each other about how things could have been better between them in terms of communication standpoint. Stutz, Phil Stutz, the therapist, he also has Parkinson's disease, which I sensed it from the beginning because I saw his right hand moving like this a little, not extreme compared to other people that have been dealing with Parkinson's disease, but I saw it from the beginning, and I said to myself, or I should say I asked myself, or does he have Parkinson's disease? And later on in the documentary, he mentions that, so there's that. I also can't forget to mention the interesting part that Stutz's mother, she had a rough childhood. She saw her mother getting beaten by her father because her father was a psychopath, abusive to the wife, but not to the daughter. And that made Phil Stutz's mom have this, I won't say hatred, but kind of like issues in terms of when it comes to men. And Phil Stutz's father always had to play the cheerleader and basically agree with her, like, yes, men are this, men are that. But that's something that I don't wish that on anyone to go through, especially in their childhood, to see their parents get beaten or they being mistreated or having just a rough um, household experience like that. So, but yeah, Phil Stutz's parents, they went through a lot, especially his mom. Phil Stutz himself has gone through stuff, but therapy helps a lot. Meditating, exercising, dieting, that all helps as well. And we all need help at some point. We all need someone we all need someone that will put that extra battery on our backs. From 1 through 5, I give this documentary a 4.3. 4.3. It's on Netflix. Like I said, I recommend you should watch it. It's one of the most important documentaries right now on Netflix. The documentary goes from an interview to like confessing to one another or expressing towards one another to back to doing the interview again. So the documentary could have gone in so many different ways, so many different places. Some people might not like it, some people might like it, but I personally like the documentary. So Stutz, directed by Jonah Hill, you should watch it. It's on Netflix right now. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that subscribe button, thumbs up, and as always, be safe, and may God bless you all.